What's up, everyone? It's your boy Radd 89 here, bringing you another video today with a very special guest. I have Angel from the Voices from Mausoleum guest starring with me today as we are going to be talking about House of Frankenstein. Angel, how you feeling about this one?
You know how long it's been since I've seen this one? Like
Has it been a
before
minute?
you asked about it, like I was when you gave me this one as like my assignment, as you called it, I was like, I know I've seen that, but I couldn't remember hardly any of it. So I rewatched it twice to prepare. But yeah, it's interesting. I probably have a decent amount to say about it. So we'll see. Because I know you think pretty highly of this one, I think, if I remember based on your post. So we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this one was one because I think if I remember remembering back to my childhood, this is the one that I remember watching first in terms of the Universal Monster
Okay, that
universe.
makes sense
Like
then. Okay.
anything like, yeah, that has to do with Dracula or Wolfman or
Okay.
Frankenstein.
Okay,
This
that
is
makes
the
sense.
first experience.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes a lot more sense then. Okay, I gotcha. Makes
Do you
sense.
want to give us a little bit of your history with the Universal Monsters? What's your
Yeah.
love for Frankenstein when you got started?
Yeah, so clearly a fan.
Yep.
Yeah, so my initial kind of diving into horror was Universal Monsters. My dad's a big sci-fi fan. He doesn't like horror in the same senses that like you or I do. But he likes silly horror and he likes old horror and he likes sci-fi horror and that kind of stuff. So, he introduced me to Universal Monsters when I was pretty young. The main three, one, two, three, four. The main four being Frankenstein, of course, Wolfman, Dracula, and then Creature from the Black Lagoon. It wasn't until a little bit later in my life that I started diving into, because there's just over, I think, 30 movies in total that have all of these characters in them. So there's a ton of them, but that I didn't really get into those until I think I was a little bit older. And so, but yeah, it's always something that's like a nostalgia hit for me. I never tire of watching specifically Frankenstein. It is my favorite, followed pretty closely by Creature from the Black Lagoon. But I just have so much love for the Frankenstein movie. And I remember like actually seeing it at its young enough, really, where it was like scary. Like now it's not scary. But back then I remember being like, when he takes the brain and then like, he does all these, and then you get to see like that scene at the water with the little girl, and there's all these things, but it was like legitimately scary. And so I think that was why I always wanted to watch them, because they always scared me. But yeah, I'm a big Universal Monsters fan. Really, creature features in general are an easy go-to for me, but those always hold a special place just because they're very nostalgic of me growing up and time that I spent with my dad. And so I always look on them pretty fondly.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know when I came up with this one and like the list of which movies I wanted to kind of cover for October, I knew you were going to be one of the people I wanted to ask to come on. And this one specifically, just because it has like a whole host of characters in it. We have the Mad Doctor in here. We got Frankenstein's monster, Wolfman, Dracula. This is kind of like the Avengers before Avengers kind of thing.
Yeah. It's got a little bit of all of them. Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah.
So today, to all our guests, we are talking about House of Frankenstein. We already said that, but it's from 1944. The stars Boris Karloff, Lon Chaney, John Carradine, Elena Vertigo, J. Carroll Nash, and Glenn Strange. So those are a whole host of great actors and actresses that are famously known for being in a lot of these movies, for sure.
Yep. Yeah. And Boris Karloff is not Frankenstein's monster. So which is like the weirdest thing. I struggled so bad with that in such a dumb way. But I was just like, I see him. He's not who he should be. I don't like this. Because I think I'm pretty sure I've seen all of the Frankenstein, at least from the original. None of the, I'm sure I haven't seen all the like modern takes on it, but he just is the best Frankenstein. I don't think his performance as Frankenstein can ever be topped. And so it felt like a weird decision to have him be a character, but not be his character. I thought that was very strange. Very strange.
Yeah. That was kind of interesting. I found that out as a fun fact thing that earlier in 1944, I guess
Mhm.
before they started filming this movie, he
Mhm.
did an interview where he said he didn't want to be the Frankenstein monster anymore in terms of the makeup. He didn't want to go through
Uh,
that and stuff.
there's a
So
lot,
they,
yeah.
yeah, so they casted Glenn Strange like right before they started production. Glenn Strange got the
Mhm.
job to be the Frankenstein monster, who's famously known for being in a lot of westerns. If you don't know him, he's did a
I
lot
do
of
know who he
westerns
is,
back
yeah.
in the day. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and
and
he did fine enough. I don't mean it in that way. It just was like it was just a weird and of course, because again, it had been so long since I'd seen it, I didn't remember that. So I was like, I know that face. Why is it not covered in stuff? And it's weird. So, but it's okay. I don't think it was like a, nothing too much of a damper on the film as a whole. But it was just one of those things that it took me a little bit to kind of get over it as I was watching it the first
yeah.
go around this time. So.
So, kind of leading in with that, do you want to start talking about some of the characters? Like, what are some of your favorite characters, and what do you think of the characters in this film?
This is probably a super cliche response, but here's the thing: like, I think Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman is just one of my favorite things in the world. I mean, he played the Wolfman in so
Yes.
many movies, and he's so great at this, like broken, just beaten down man. That's like he just always looks like he's about to cry. Like and he's so good at playing that like woe is me kind of character. And so of course
Yeah,
when he comes into this and they unfreeze him and all that stuff, it's like he's just such a wonderful sight to see. I think he nails the performance every time he played Lawrence, and I just think he's so great at it. So of course I loved him.
yeah,
um and I think Boris did a really good job at playing the doctor. I thought the doctor was very reminiscent of Frankenstein as the doctor. Like, I felt like the movie in general was kind of almost a retelling of like a collection of pieces throughout the Universal Monster movies, which I didn't hate that, but it was just, I thought that it kind of was, he did a very good job kind of filling in that type of, I guess, like character archetype for
yeah.
the main point of the story. Um, I think those are probably the two strengths. I think the Dracula wasn't super impressive to me, but the guy that plays him I've seen do other things, and I really like him. But I guess because they spent like the first little bit of the movie kind of fixating on Dracula, but then he like wasn't really,
Yeah,
he didn't really
he was.
matter like the second half of
Yeah,
the movie. He just kind of like vanished.
I
Um,
know it was kind of weird. They just kind of used him, like basically the evil doctor and Daniel's character just kind of used Dracula, and that was it.
And then he was just kind of out of it. Oh, I do think the guy that played Daniel did a great job. I liked him too. He
Yeah,
was
he
really
was
good.
fantastic.
Um, the female lead was a little irritating. She kind of annoyed me. But I have to
She did.
remember these movies are a product of their time. And
Mhm.
so that matters when you're talking about kind of the portrayal of these types of characters and their roles and stuff. And so with that, I think she's fine. But yeah, I think Daniel, I don't know. I don't know the actor's name, but Boris and Glenn, or not Glenn, and Lon, I think did the best jobs. I think they were the standout performances and really drove home, I think, some of the more important plot points and stuff. So, and Glenn playing the monster was fine. It just wasn't as like unsettling as it was the first time I ever saw Frankenstein. So it's kind of like,
Yeah,
but yeah, so those were the standout things, for me as far as the performances go and characters.
nice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So this one, yeah, I know Lon Chaney, as you mentioned him for real. Like he's so charming. Like there's something about him, like you said, there's that sorrow look to him, but then he's so charming. Like when the girl's kind of flirting with him and she's talking to him and she wants to sit next to him as he's like driving the stagecoach, and his face is just like, I don't want to talk to nobody. I'm
I
sad. Like
know.
it is just
Yeah. And she like tries to reach for him and he's kind of like,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And I love his I love his character as Lawrence. I really liked the remakes version of Lawrence as well. I think it was a much more rugged version because I feel like this one is very just so emotional. Like he doesn't have
Yeah.
any hardness to him. And by this point in his storyline, he's been through the ringer. Like he's been through so much by the time this takes place that you'd think he would have some hardness to him, but he doesn't. He's just this poor little soft baby. He's so sad and like just wants to die. And like But he did so
it's
good.
oh yeah. And that's one thing, as you brought that up, that's true. As the Wolfman's been through a lot. This House of Frankenstein is a sequel to Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman.
Yep.
There's also another film. Like I said, if you to really get the full effect of this film, I think as a fan, it would be great if you did watch, Frankenstein, Wolfman, and the Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. Those are three movies that really go coinciding with this one in terms of leading you into where the characters are at the story,
Yeah, because Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is essentially how he ends up in the block of ice in this movie.
Yeah.
It leads into that part of the storyline when he's trying to find help and get out of, having to deal with his curse. So, yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. For me, I thought it was interesting just really diving into these movies again, rewatching a lot of them over this past September, was that seeing how they were able to bridge a lot of these films together, like, and bring these characters together. And I don't think it's bad. Like, a lot of these movies, they did a really good job of kind of, like said, mixing them together. How did you feel about the whole blending of the characters and like getting the Mad Doctor, the Wolfman, and Frankenstein's monster all in one movie?
I think it's weird that it's not done more in like a present sense for movies, because I feel like it does work so well and it just does make sense. Like, I mean, you're talking about, a set of movies that even have like the Abbott and Costello ones, the comedy ones where they meet, which are amazing. They're so fun. And like, when you think about it, it's like, how? But it just works. I don't know. Like, I think the thing that a lot of these, other than of course Dracula, because he's just not a great person. But I think that the biggest thing with Frankenstein's monster and Wolfman in particular, those two, they're very similar in concept as far as being stuck in this role of something that they don't want to be in. Frankenstein's monster obviously did not ask to be sewn together and brought to life. The Wolfman, Lawrence didn't want that. He didn't want to become that and have to deal with it. And so they both carry these similar or parallel type of mindsets of, I'm stuck in this situation that I don't want to be in, and I need help changing it because I can't do anything about it myself. And so I think that those two naturally go better together. I think Dracula was probably more of an outcast in this one, honestly. But I think that those two make sense to go together. And then as you get into the other ones where they all end up together, they just make it work. I think they did a good job of taking the themes that are present in some of the, in the more like original movies, and then expanding them into why these characters would meet, what they might have in common. And I think that that's the reason it works, because they're looking at like why these characters are the way they are. Why do they work the way that they work in their own films, and then recognizing the similarities between them.
That's true. Because like back in the day, people got to realize, like in the 30s and 40s, it wasn't all about gore and special effects and everything. It was more about like the storytelling, the rich acting. All these actors, all of them do a very fantastic job. So I think the richness of the characters and the story really brings to life a lot of these amazing characters.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And to just kind of piggyback off what you said, I mean, that's one of the reasons that, Lawrence is so emotional. You've got the Frankenstein's monster that can't function as like a normal human because he's literally parts put together. Then, I mean, even stepping outside of those two and looking at like the Invisible Man or the Mummy or Dracula, like they all had their very own sides of the story. And it was a lot deeper than just quick effects. And of course, you're talking about a time before they even really had. I mean, you talk about not wanting to do the makeup. Lon Chaney sitting for Wolfman makeup. I can't even imagine, because they do that in stages. It's like, well, because you've seen them, but like, how it'll do that weird like fade out thing. They cut the camera, they add more, they film for a second, they cut the camera. I'm like,
yeah, it's like stop motion animation almost.
Yeah, it is, because you can see the cuts. It's not super, this is you're talking about a time before smooth editing. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think the emotion, it just adds to it. And you end up caring a lot more, I feel, about the characters than maybe you would expect to in a monster movie.
Yeah.
Which I think is why I like things like Nightbreed, because there's an emotional thing with, those monsters, and it's not the monsters that are the bad guys, it's actually the humans. And I love stuff like that. It stems from watching these, because they're all like that. The exception being, I think, Dracula, because Dracula's a different monster literally altogether, right? But I think at least in speaking about Frankenstein's monster and Wolfman, you do genuinely want better things for them. You just do.
Oh yeah, definitely for sure. And then even when we get into kind of, Boris Karloff, his crazy doctor, mad doctor performance,
Yeah.
that is wild. And him and Daniel, I think they had a good chemistry, which was J. Carol Nash. I think them two had a
Okay.
great chemistry on screen. They were fantastic. And
Oh
so
yeah.
like the scene when they go to visit Lampini and
Mhm.
they get the hitchhiking ride like from Lampini, and then
Mhm.
you see Daniel like just leaning over to him as like
Slowly.
Karloff just looks at him and he's like gives him the signal. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah, and then it's Daniel is another character though that I ended up caring a lot about. Like there's like these times when he's talking to the girl and he's like he says this like one line just like cut me. He was like, "You used to smile at me sometimes." And I was like they like broke my heart. I was like, this poor guy, he's out here killing people, doing bad stuff, and he's like, he just wants to be loved and normal and like his version of normal and all these things. And he's like, that's when he tells him at the end, or towards the end, he's like, I did remember these people, I killed these people for you, and you didn't do anything like you said, And he feels so bad for him. But you're right, their chemistry was great. They play those roles off of each other very, very well.
Oh yeah. So like a lot of the sympathy that you feel, for Daniel's like hardcore because
Yeah.
he does anything and everything for this mad doctor and goes through the ringer, as you would say, kind of thing. And I thought that
Yeah.
scene, like when he breaks down and he's just like whipping the Frankenstein monster, like like I was just like you can see the anger in him and
It
how
was
frustrated he
upsetting.
was.
Yeah, that's an upsetting scene. And then, of
Yeah.
course, and then too, I was thinking too, because I'm like such a Frankenstein monster fan, but I was like, that poor monster, like he's just like strapped to that table being beat. It's not his fault,
I
It's
know. I
like
wonder. I
he's like
wonder how Glenn
taking
Strange
out.
felt taking those shots. Like it looked like he took
Oh,
a couple like real shots.
well, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, so yeah, that scene was rough. Like I felt pretty uncomfortable watching that overall because it is such an emotional moment, and seeing the lash out, you're just like, oh, because we've already seen him be violent. We've seen him kill people. He
Yeah.
attacked the guy with the whip when he hit the girl earlier, or towards
Yeah. When
the
yeah.
beginning of and he's like, we've already seen that. But this just hits different because it's like a breakdown basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of funny. I found out some cool fun facts too that I could talk about with specifically, I think it was towards the end. That's one of those scenes where the Frankenstein monster ends up throwing Daniel out the window. In that scene, Glenn Strange actually missed the pad. So Daniel really hit the concrete floor when he flew out the window out of that scene. He was okay though, because I guess the hump with the design of the hump and what they did for
It'll
the
help break
padding
the
actually
fall.
it helped break his fall. So yeah, when he got thrown out the window, he really hit the
Oh
floor.
my god.
And then there's the scene when they were frozen, when the Frankenstein monster
Oh.
and Wolfman are frozen.
Mhm.
They were trying to do, I guess, the steam effect. So they had breathing tubes shoved into Strange's like nose or whatever, so he could breathe, but he couldn't exhale. So he kept pressing the panic button and everything. So that way they had to stop it and let him out to breathe, and then they would have to film again. So that
Ooh,
apparently that
man.
scene was very difficult for them to film.
Yeah, well, they have to go through. They had to go through different things back then to accomplish stuff. Like now, it's much easier to do those things, right? Because you can just add
Oh
it in
yeah,
with a computer. You can do, yeah. That's scary. Well, yeah, yeah. I was gonna well, like the guy that did Creature from the Black Lagoon was like anti air tanks.
oh wow,
So
really?
yeah, so like the scenes when he's like floating in the water, like this the big scene, right, where he's like looking up at her swimming.
Yeah.
He really just had to hold his breath like unnaturally long times. And because the filmmaker wanted it to look realistic.
Oh
And
wow.
so he was like, no air tanks. And yeah, so these people went through a lot to make these movies.
Oh yeah, they have no idea. Like these people, yeah, it's like guerrilla filmmaking style, like almost like kind of stuff. The
No,
stuff you
for
hear
real.
about that they went through.
No, for real. Yeah, it's crazy.
So, how did you feel about the story overall and the climax and everything? How did you feel about the journey that this film took you on?
Yeah, so I feel like this was I kind of said this a little bit earlier, but I'll elaborate. So I felt like this was kind of just a retelling of Frankenstein, in the sense that it follows the same pattern. You've got the guy doing you've got the assistant role, right, going and doing the thing so that the mad doctor can do what he wants to do, and it's related to the monster. Of course, obviously in this case we also get Wolfman and Dracula very briefly, but he's referencing Frankenstein often. He has his diary journal, whatever you want to call it, and he's like going to do, he's like, oh, I'm going to be basically the next Frankenstein, right? Because he's like idolizes him and wants to be like him. And so it kind of takes that same path of the setup for that story, and even the ending. The monster takes him away from the people with the torches. I mean, it's very reminiscent of the original storyline. So I think in that regard, it felt like that part of it lacked a little bit for me, because it would have been cool if they had just done something different with it. Because I think they still could have kept those components of like, okay, we're essentially making another Dr. Frankenstein. I think that works. I don't have any problems with that. I think people really are that crazy. No problem there. But it would have been cool for them to follow a different path or a different flow of events, or even include Dracula more, or just kind of switch it up a little bit. Because towards the end, it really was mostly just a Frankenstein movie, or Frankenstein's monster movie. And so it would have been cool going back to it if it had been more, because I didn't really remember much of this one because it had been so long since I'd seen it. But I mean, other than that, I liked the way that we got to meet everybody. So I like the introduction of like him taking over Lampini and like taking him out and getting Dracula and pulling the stake out. And that scene when Dracula comes to, and he tells him to put the stake away, and he's like, okay, but if you move, he's like, I'm not taking no chances. You will go back to where you were. I did really like that too. And then of course, obviously when we go into and we meet, Wolfman and the monster and the ice and just kind of all the building blocks I thought were well done as far as scenes go and the story components. But I wish the overall story had been just a little bit different, because I think that would have probably set it apart for me, just because it did feel super similar to the original Frankenstein.
Definitely understandable, because all the points you make, like I said, it's story beat wise, the way the film kind of ends, it's very much like said, kind of the same plot points and everything like that. So great analysis on that. For me, like being such a huge fan of this one, because like I said, for me, this was my kind of first introduction to this universe. I did like to dive into the other films and seen all the other ones many times now, and it's just this one just holds a special place in my heart, because I remember those times watching it as a kid, and it was like Turner Classic Movies, turning it on. October time, they always had the black and white films going on. They always do, and still to this day.
Yeah. And that's why I said it makes sense, because it's kind of like when you watch a remake before the original. If you love the remake, it's very hard to go back to the original and get the feeling you would have gotten if you had seen that one first. So if this is your first introduction, then obviously if you go and you see Frankenstein after this, it's just going to hit very different. Whereas I think I came into this one much later. So I was already super versed in Frankenstein. And Wolfman too, but more so Frankenstein. So by the time I got to this one, I had already had that other experience. And I think that matters just in terms of like how you experience it as your introduction to it versus the other way around.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's what's kind of cool too, is like really talking about these movies, why I wanted to do these ones specifically for September and October, kind of diving into them, because there's a lot of people in the horror community that haven't seen these ones. They've seen so many renditions or remakes or all these new ones, but they've never gone back and watched the OG originals, which these ones, like we said, we have strong stories, strong characters, great actors and actresses that committed to doing some crazy stuff back in the day, and they pulled it off.
No, for sure. Yeah. And then to be able to, I mean, they obviously recast Frankenstein, I think several times, or the monster, you know what I mean when I say Frankenstein. Nobody come for me. I know the difference. But they, and obviously Dracula's recast in this. We're not talking about Bela Lugosi. But for what it's worth, the people who play these characters in these movies, a lot of them really did stick it out, because Bela Lugosi is in several. He's also in the Abbott and Costello one. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. He plays Dracula in that, and he is Dracula. So it works. Like, but to think about the level of commitment for these same people to be coming back to do these projects. And even in the case of Boris, like Boris Karloff coming back and playing basically the opposite role and playing the doctor versus the monster. I mean, he's still coming in and still doing, you know, these franchised movies of like these monsters. And I think that says probably a lot about how they felt about the movies too, because they weren't obligated to do that. I mean, these are big names. These are people that were doing way other things, not just monster movies. So for them to keep coming back, it obviously had to have been something for them too, you know?
Oh yeah, that's a big deal. It's like with there's that continuity and also that love. Like you see that love for those old school monster movies for sure. This one actually did come out on, I believe, Halloween Day in 1944, which was kind of cool. Or it came out like in that weekend, I think, of Halloween, which is kind of cool.
Very cool.
But another thing is there is a sequel to this one too. House of Dracula is the sequel. So if you want to go on, there is more stories to this one too as well. So overall, since we're kind of diving into more towards the end, what kind of rating would you give this film, an overall rating?
You do out of 10?
Yeah, usually I typically do out of 10. For the monster movies, I've been kind of doing like this new class system thing, but that's like tier A is like all-time classic. You can see why people love them and stuff like that, and they're at the top. And then tier B is like a little flawless, but we can do it 1 out of 10.
Okay. I knew you were going to ask me that, and I still didn't. I'm still not prepared. Let me think. I would say, I think it encompasses all of the things that make the Universal monster movies so special to people. And I think that even though it felt a little repetitive for some of the pathways of the story specifically, I think I would still probably give this probably an 8 out of 10. I really liked going back to it. It was fun and I rewatched it again just to make sure, you know, it's different when you've seen something like 100. Well, you know, it's like when you've seen something 100 times, like you don't even need to revisit it. Right. But this one, I was like, I wanted to make sure, because the first reviewing of it, which was last week or the week before, whenever we originally planned things out, I was left feeling it kind of mad about it because I was like, oh, it's kind of like a little too retelling, but I watched it again because I was like, I feel like I need to watch it again. And I got a lot more out of it, I think, the second time than I did the first time. And I was able to kind of get past some of that silliness of being worried about the storytelling being similar. Because I mean, they're all monster movies. There's going to be similarities, right? But no, I think that's really good. I think that I love these movies. There's a couple that I really just am not a big fan of. I'm not a huge fan of the original Invisible Man, and I'm not super into The Mummy.
Oh, wow.
I know. It's controversial to say, but I think I liked probably The Mummy over Invisible Man. I have my qualms with that, with Invisible Man's, all of them, literally all of the movies that have ever been made with him. But anyway, but you know, I think these are fun. I think they're easy to go back to. I wonder sometimes what maybe like someone who didn't grow up with these, like how they would perceive these, because I go back to them for nostalgia. You have a connection to them as well. So it's like, I wonder what would this experience be like watching this movie if like you had never seen or weren't super into these, you know, and you didn't grow up watching them, because I don't know if the rewatchability for me is so high because I do love them. You know what I mean? Like maybe I'm biased in that way, but yeah, I would give this like an 8 out of 10. I think that this isn't quite A, right? This is probably like a B. I think that it's really good. It's got some things I didn't really like that I think if they had done slightly different things, it really would have elevated the experience as a film so much later into these movies. But I think it's probably, it's still pretty high up there in my opinion.
Nice. Definitely a good rating. I like that. I like that analogy and the explanation. Really good. For me, I would probably I'd probably go 9. And after, like I said, rewatching it and talking with you, there's definitely some negatives, like I said, with certain characters, being that John Carradine is a great Dracula, but we don't get a lot of him. Like I said, he's just kind of there for a purpose. And then the ending is just kind of very anticlimactic. Like I wanted something, wanted something more. Like I said, there could have been this more epic, maybe battle fight or if they would have kept Dracula in as maybe the main villain, and he comes back later in the third act to come back for revenge because they left him behind or something, there could have been some kind of tie-in, and then so
no, I totally agree with that.
After talking with you, there's definitely flaws that I see with it. And me, it's just being such a lover of the movie, and like I said, that heavy rewatch value that every time I watch this film, I get something out of it. Yeah. There are some stuff that doesn't age well, though. Like I said, with the ladies, there are some things that don't age well very much in this film.
Yeah. It's like that in all of them. There's like, I rewatched Wolfman like not that long ago for something else. I don't remember why. What we were talking about, I think I did it on Cursed Beings. But so I was like, I forgot like how much of a creeper Lon Chaney is in that movie as like Lauren. He just like shows up in the shop. He's like watching her he's like
a stalker. Yeah, he's
but it's
he's like a peeping Tom.
He is, but I never thought. But to your point, there are just things. These are products of their time. And sometimes with these types of things, you do have to kind of remember that when you're going back and watching them because they're very old. So I know there's some weird things. Like even I found out too that the director and he wanted the gypsy woman to be brunette, so she had to wear a wig because she's blonde. The actress that plays the gypsy is blonde. That plays her?
Yeah, so she had to wear a brunette wig because I guess apparently there could be no blonde gypsies. Apparently, like that was a thing. Yeah. I don't know.
That's crazy. Yeah.
But I would probably say as a rating, I'd probably give this one a 9. I would give it a 9, and like I could easily put it in A tier because for me it's an all-time classic. But as stands for the way people view it, I could see it being a B tier because it's not as heavily like influential as like Creature from the Black Lagoon or the Mummy or some of the other ones. You know what I mean? Frankenstein and all those and stuff.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. I think all of them are at least worth a visit regardless. But I think these are fun. I do not remember House of Dracula. I know I've seen it, but I can't.
Yeah, I've seen that one too. I'm gonna probably watch that one coming up because I kind of bounced around. Like I have that 30 movie pack, and I was just bouncing around, just grabbing random discs and watching whatever I wanted. So I might watch House of Dracula later tomorrow or something like that.
Yeah, but I think these are fun movies. I'm always discouraged when there's not more people talking about them and doing things with them because now we're getting all these remakes and. We've got the new Wolfman. Del Toro just finished Frankenstein.
I heard James Wan wants to do Creature from the Black Lagoon. I heard rumors that he wants the rights to that.
He should, if he does it, I think he should write it.
He should write it.
He should, no offense. He should write it and he should let Del Toro do the effects.
That'd be cool. Cool.
He's like... He's a massive Creature from the Black Lagoon. I mean, obviously, he did Abe Sapien for Hellboy. He did Shape of Water. He's very, very heavily influenced by Creature from the Black Lagoon. I think they would make a power team if they got together and made that film together. That's just my opinion. Not that there's anything wrong with him directing. I'm just saying I prefer when he's right.
Yeah, that's okay. It's understandable. I've never been that big a fan of one. Like I appreciate what he's done for the horror genre, but I've never really been the biggest fan of him. Like I said, I like some of his movies, but I don't love his movies. Yeah,
I love a lot of his movies. I do. I mean, obviously, I'm a big Saw fan. He was involved in Saw. Yeah. He was involved in. Oh my God, The Conjuring. He's done, but that was
Dead Silence. I think Dead Silence.
Yeah, he did the puppets for that too. I mean, and that's the thing is he's versatile. He can do it all. I just don't prefer him in the director's seat. I prefer him in the writing seat, which is okay. I think that's cool. Fine to say. But anyway, yeah. So I think I wish more people would talk about these and give them a chance because it sucks to think that somebody's first Wolfman experience is going to be the Ryan Gosling one. Like I'm so bothered, thinking about that. I'm like, Oh my God. You know, so I want people to go back and like watch, I mean, at least watch the 2010 remake first. Like if you know, if you're not going to go back and watch the black and whites, then watch something that's at least close enough to the source material, storyline wise. But yes, I'm hoping, you know, maybe it'll get people interested enough to go back and look at them. But so many people won't watch them strictly because they're black and white.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of crazy is like I've noticed
Yeah.
for me, these are some of my favorite films to watch, like either early in the morning, like right before dawn, or like at midnight going into like 1 in the morning. Like these are like
Yeah.
the perfect movies to watch because of the visuals and the black and white
Yeah.
and the cinematography.
Yeah, I love the way that these look, and I don't have, I mean, I watch that kind of stuff, just doesn't, it's never affected me. I mean, but I know people who won't watch movies with subtitles. So, I mean, you know, it's just, everybody's got their things, I guess, but these are just, they're so iconic, and they laid so much of the groundwork for our modern monster movies that it's weird to me when people won't even give them a chance. I'm like, come on, man. Like, so many
Yeah.
things you like started with them. Like, you
Oh
know,
yeah,
so
these are the granddaddy, like these are the granddaddy films. These are the ones that like they're
yeah,
old school. They've been there and they did it first, and now all the children are out doing their own thing.
exactly. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And so, you know, like I have a friend of mine that wanted to go through all of these on his channel, and we were going through some of them, and he like decided to switch gears because like they weren't getting any views because people weren't interested in them. And I'm like, I don't understand that, because I am. I love
Yeah.
these movies. I never get tired of talking about them or hearing about them. I'm here for it.
Oh yeah. It's gonna be exciting. Like I said, you're one of my special guests, and then I actually have Steve is supposed to come on. He's gonna be coming on to do a little special thing. I'll tease a little bit of what he wants to come on for. It's gonna be something that has to do with a Technicolor version of a nice little Universal monster film.
Okay.
So that's gonna be really cool.
Okay, I gotcha. Cool. Okay. Yeah. That's a good one for him, I think. If I'm right.
All right.
But yeah.
You're like, so
Yeah.
before we sign off or we head out or anything, is there anything from Voices that is coming up that you would like to plug, Angel?
Um, what are we doing? I'm doing 31 days of found footage. Zeus help me.
Nice.
And so we're ramping back up and getting back on track with like our found footage movies. So I think by the time you told me this is going to be out, we will have just covered VHS Beyond.
Sweet.
So we had so many things to say about that one. So that's probably out already. But yeah, we're just pretty much business as usual. We've been doing, you know, our influential horror series where we have people come on and talk their 5 most influential horror movies. I'm really trying to back off of interviews just because I'm getting ready to wind down because I take the month of December off for content. But I really
Nice.
want to interview Isaac Rodriguez. Do you know who that is? He's a filmmaker that does like, he has like he has made a shit ton of found footage movies. Like when I tell you
Nice.
like a ton, he has made so many, and he's like my age. I'm like, where do you find the time to make all these movies? So I really would like to get him on at some point in the near future. But yeah, otherwise, you know, our back to usual stuff, found footage Fridays, influential horror. I've got a couple of, I think author interviews I'm getting ready to do. And, yeah, we've got at some point in October, I don't know when we're doing it. I think it's going to be the last week in October. We're going to do a live Halloween spooky version of D&D.
Nice. That's what's up. That sounds fun.
Yeah. So Steve's going to DM it, and we've got a couple people that are fans of D&D and have played, and you know, and so we're going to do what is said to be a short game. I don't know if you've ever played D&D. That's not really a thing, but we'll see how it goes. I will not be sitting on a live for 6 hours. That much I will tell you. So it will have to be short, but I think that'll be kind of something fun to do towards Halloween. And then I don't know if we're going to do a Halloween live this year. It just depends. Cause you know, I mean, you've kids, you know, like having like,
oh, yeah.
It's busy that whole week, and even the week before, you're like doing school events, you're getting costumes, or you know, or getting stuff ready for if they need bags, or if you need candy for your house, or if you're getting last minute decorate, whatever, right? So it's very busy. So I don't know if we're gonna do another Halloween live or not. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Pretty much normal stuff going on over there.
Nice. Sounds like very, very, very awesome. Like I said, if you want to, I'll have the link for Voices down below in the description, so you could click on that link, go follow them, because like I said, Angel, Steve, they're always putting out some really awesome content. So, and always supporting amazing people in the horror community. And thank you, Angel, for joining along for House of Frankenstein. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and please, we highly, highly recommend that you all dive into these films and watch them. And like I said, if you really want the full effect of this one, I suggest you take that journey. Go Frankenstein, then the Wolfman, then go Frankenstein meets Wolfman, and then end off with House of Frankenstein, because I think you'll have a lot of fun. So now we're going to sign off. Have everybody out there have a safe and happy day and all that stuff. You know what's up. Peace out.